It is absurd for immense financial resources to be lost in rearmament, destroyed by the waste of the consumer society, and eroded by inappropriate use of the heritage of mankind. The time has come to develop a rational project that defines the use of energy and natural resources as elements of social change that serve man, and sees the use of technological innovations and economic resources not as power serving the interests of the strongest, but as the result of the collective creation of all human beings. This program can be carried out. Its historical viability cannot be impugned. Nevertheless, its implementation implies abandoning rhetoric and moralizing attitudes in order to find practical approaches and take definite steps. Despite the delaying tactics and obstinacy of the power centers, today we reiterate our willingness to aid in keeping the dialogue alive. We have always believed in negotiation as a means of finding areas of understanding between different ideologies and conflicting interests, as well as in the possibility of devising machinery for cooperation that offer legitimate advantages to all peoples. In Nairobi, the Third World once again proved, in spite of obstacles and a lack of understanding, that it has a civilizing project based on moderation, strict historical objectivity, and a genuine spirit of conciliation. We, Third World countries, must accompany our determined pursuit of joint and harmonious world efforts with immediate progress in our own coordinated relations. Our political organization must be carried a step further to a new stage of economic organization. Next September, a meeting of the member nations of the Group of 77 will be held in Mexico for the purpose of developing a program of cooperation among our countries. The fundamental obligation of all Third World governments today is to begin the task of organizational, analytical, and creative transformation. Unless we establish solid, efficient, and modern states, we will not be able to combat internal distortions in our own societies. Unless we are willing to establish among ourselves and for ourselves definite instruments, devices, and machinery for achieving solidarity in technological, financial, industrial, and commercial matters, we will make no progress toward our more ambitious goals of reforming the world order. The Latin American economic system proposed by Mexico has become an integral part of this fundamental Third World strategy for promoting progress through joint efforts and action. Next September, within the general framework of this joint strategy, we will also inaugurate in Mexico City the Third World Center for Economic and Social Studies, which has the support and sympathy of the United Nations. Our Secretary General, His Excellency Dr. Kurt Waldheim, has done us the honor of laying the cornerstone of this institution. Only in this search for a more just and balanced order can this Human Settlements Conference achieve major solutions. For the purpose of studying these problems is to find means of providing more fitting living standards for both rural and urban dwellers that will enable them to fulfill their inherent potential and exercise the human rights recognized by the community of nations. The United Nations continues to be the best forum for bringing about the understanding among peoples that the changing conditions of international coexistence demand. The organization was born in 1945 as the result of an agreement among victorious nations to which dozens of independent nations joined. Today, in 1976, 144 states containing the vast majority of the world's population belong to the United Nations. The change has been radical. In a little more than 30 years, the people of more than 100 territories still under colonial rule at the time of the San Francisco Charter was signed have achieved national independence. Now, faced as we are with new realities, the criteria that prevailed in the post-war era cannot be applied. At that time, the United Nations played a vital role in preserving a peace attained at the high cost of millions of human lives. Preserving that peace was and is an essential goal, but the means of doing so must be considerably revised. There are two basic choices open to our organization: to see its role as that of a mere administrator of an antiquated system that has been outstripped by events and by the new composition of the majority of its members, or to recognize its obligation to change its ways. Only the second alternative can lead to peace. To face the future, this institution must be strengthened, and it is the responsibility of its member nations to give in the strength it must have to play the decisive role that history has assigned to it. To that end, a place must be made within the organization and in all its forums for the voice of the representatives of the majority of the world's population as the only guarantee of a future of liberty and justice.
Mr. President, I was going to thank you on behalf of the conference, but the conference has made its thanks very obvious to you, and we're grateful to you indeed. May I request representatives to remain in the hall while the Secretary General and I accompany the President out of the hall. The plenary meeting will be suspended for just 5 minutes and then resume. Okay. Distinguished delegates, the plenary meeting is resumed. Tomorrow morning, we will hear 10 speakers in the general debate. I should like to remind delegations that, as we have decided earlier, the list of speakers will be closed at 6 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, June the 1st. Delegates who desire to participate in the general debate but who have not yet inscribed themselves on the list should please contact the Secretariat. Members will no doubt understand that only after the closure of the list will it be possible to determine whether or not evening or weekend meetings will be necessary to accommodate all those who wish to speak. The list of speakers from day to day will be published in the Journal of the Conference. I should now like to give the floor to the Secretary of the Conference.
Thank you, Mr. President. Few announcements. As you have just indicated, tomorrow we will start the general debate. So, delegation having text of prepared statements are requested to provide 15 copies in advance of delivery to the conference officer. These copies will be given to the interpreters and to the technical services and will assist the Secretariat in providing the best possible service. Delegations wishing to have their statement distributed in plenary to all delegations are kindly requested to provide 250 copies to be given to the conference officer in the plenary hall. Monsieur le Président, en ce qui concerne les postes des récepteurs qui n'a pas marché très bien aujourd'hui, ces récepteurs sont pour des...
These are for the interpretation, and they are almost everywhere transistorized, and they differ from room to room. We are talking about the listening devices for the interpretation. We cannot use the different ones in the different conference rooms. They must stay in the original conference rooms. And the rooms, the delegates are asked to leave at their seats or to return to the conference officers these interpretation devices. As regards the regional group meetings, there will be a meeting of the Latin American group tomorrow morning on 1 June between 9 and 10 a.m. at the Vancouver Hotel at the Vancouver Island Room.
By the host country to make the following announcement. The Chief of Protocol understands that some delegates have not received their invitations to tonight's reception to be given by the Prime Minister of Canada. For your information, all participants in the conference are invited to the receptions with their spouses. The reception is to be held in the aquarium in Stanley Park, beginning at 6:30. There will be a continuous bus services from 6 on from the Hotel Vancouver to the reception and back downtown. Everybody is encouraged to travel on these buses if at all possible. After the adjournment, sir, we will have the meetings of the three committees simultaneously in this cell, sir, just after the adjournment of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidara. I should like to point out that the regional meetings, rather than being from 9 to 10, should really be from 9 to 9:45, as our meetings will be starting here at 10 o'clock promptly. Our next meeting will commence promptly at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I now call this meeting adjourned.